Hey there everybody, Scotia here with a very exciting video for today because this is the very first chapter review for JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 9, the JoJOLands. So if you're new to this channel or you're unfamiliar with this aspect of my channel, covering JoJo's Bizarre Adventure has been something I've wanted to do and tried to do a couple times now, but for various reasons, from just general disinterest on my part to, not really getting the engagement and viewership that I, felt was worth continuing covering JoJo. I kind of just gave up on some parts. I was going to review Stone Ocean, the anime episodes, but the format that Netflix released them on was just awful, so I just gave up on that. But one thing that I've always wanted to do, and I've always intended to do, is do reviews for each chapter of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 9, the JoJoLands, as they release. And after, nearly 2 years now, I think, we finally are here. The start of a new part, the first for what I can only assume is 90% of the fan base. I mean, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure the anime, which I imagine is how most people got into the series, that started in 2012, which was only about a year or so into JoJoLands Part 8. And so most people, will be experiencing the start of a new part for the first time, and myself included in that. And it's just a very exciting time for JoJo. This is something that people who have, been caught up on the manga at any point since Part 8 finished, this is something they've been waiting a long time for, so it's finally here, and I am going to start it soon. This is a pretty meaty chapter, it's about 69 pages. But before we start, I just wanted to get some things out the way to kind of set the tone of what these reviews are going to be like, and also, help people get an idea of what kind of JoJo fan I am. So I figured I'd start off with just ranking the parts for my own personal tier list. I do want to say before I do this, I don't think any part of JoJo is bad. I enjoy them all. It's just I kind of rank them based on overall enjoyment and kind of my own personal interest in the setting and the premise. I did actually do a video on this quite a while ago, I think either just after JoJoLands finished or just before Stone Ocean anime started. But basically it was just a list of me kind of ranking the parts and my feelings on them. And while my feelings on each part in terms of what I liked and what I didn't like about each part, while that hasn't changed, the overall order of the list has changed. So I'm not going to go in depth into anything now. If you want to check it out, by all means check it out. I'll have it linked somewhere in this video, either in the description or at the end of the video. But yeah, so I'm just going to kind of quickly go over my part rankings now, and then hopefully at some point, either in this review or future reviews of future chapters, if you wonder why I ended up thinking a certain way about something, you can kind of go back to this part of the video or my main video itself and kind of go, okay, I understand why he, thought this about that part because he likes this part more. I don't know, that's kind of my logic about it. I don't really know if it's worth doing, but I'm basically just going to do it because essentially on this channel my JoJo tier list ranking whatever is out of date compared to the last video I did. So yeah, I'm just going to do it now quickly. So just starting from top to bottom, number 1 is Steel Ball Run, number 2 is Stone Ocean, number 3 is Diamond is Unbreakable, number 4 is Battle Tendency, number 5 is Golden Wind, number 6 is Stardust Crusaders, number 7 is JoJoLands, and number 8 is Fandom Blood. So again, just want to get it out there, I don't hate any of these parts. I recently reread Steel Ball Run and JoJoLands, and I enjoyed JoJoLands a lot more this time. I tweeted about it saying that, still some little things here and there, but I vastly enjoyed it on my second reread much more than I did the first time. My only reason that I put it so low is that in terms of the premise and the setting, I just don't like it as much as other parts. And the same with Phantom Blood. I think Phantom Blood is really good. I just, compared to the kind of simplicity of it compared to future parts, I just, I feel like there has to be something at the bottom of my rankings, and unfortunately it has to be part 1. So the only other thing I really want to talk about before we actually get to the review itself is how this is really going to work, because honestly I haven't really set in stone yet how I want these reviews to go. I haven't nailed anything down. This is really the first time I've ever done something like this. Like I said before, I was planning to do this for Stone Ocean and the JoJoLands, chapters whenever that happened, but I never did it for Stone Ocean, so I have no real experience reviewing stuff, at least in a video format. I'm going to try my best, but what I'm planning to do basically, at least at first, is I'm going to basically just go through the chapter as I record myself talking, and I'm kind of just going to go over the chapter and give my thoughts on it as I go through the story. So I'm going to recap the story, not beat for beat and page for page, but I'm just going to go over things and just kind of be okay, there's this part and this is what I felt about this part. I may skip over parts if I don't really have any strong feelings on them. So yeah, that's basically what this is going to be like. Another thing I think you should keep in mind is that visually there's really not going to be a lot going on in this video, because obviously this is a manga review and this is all still pages, so there's not going to be really any like motion or stuff going on. I am going to have some manga pages and panels on the screen as I talk about certain panels and pages, but I will be editing out the text because I don't want to get copyright striked for any reason, so I'm just playing it safe in that regard. But honestly, I just recommend you watch this video as a sort of podcast format where you just have this video open in a separate tab and then go and listen to it while you do other stuff or whatever. There's really no need to watch anything. If I reference something that I have to put on the screen that's not related to the manga or the page in general that I'm talking about, like if it's like, oh, this reminded me of this thing and I have to put on a clip or a video or something like that, I will try and like say it beforehand so that if you're not watching the screen you can get you'll know in advance when it's time to watch the screen if you need to. I don't know when this is going to happen. It probably won't happen in this video, I don't know, like we'll just have to see how it goes. But yeah, so just keep that in mind. Like visually there's really not any real reason to kind of like watch this video. I would rather you just listen to it because it would probably just be better that way. So yeah, that's it for now. That's the intro out of the way. If I think of anything else I'll put it in the comments or the description, or I'll like put a little text thing after this. But yeah, I think that's it. So without all out the way, finally let's begin with the review. So we start this chapter off, and this part in general, with a page about stands and a quote from a certain mangaka. There's nothing else really on this page to really talk about outside of the quote, but we'll have to see if this quote will mean anything later on in the part or not. But for now, that's kind of all there really is to it. It's just a really cool opening page that I think just grabs the reader's attention. On the next page we get a double colour spread featuring the new JoJo, but also a little bit about this story, saying that even though it might be bullshit, this story is about a boy who becomes rich in subtropical islands. We also finally get the name of our next JoJo, and it is JoJo Joestar. So even though we've only just been introduced to this new JoJo, I want to talk about his name and the name of another character who actually hasn't been introduced yet by this point of the chapter, and that is Dragona Joestar. Now, I'll be honest, at first when these names, because these names actually leaked like about the night before this chapter came out, it was very up in the air for quite a while actually if this was fake or not, because it certainly sounded like it at the time, and it was just very unclear whether or not this was true or not, and eventually it turned out it was true. But by now I've made my peace with these names, even though I just don't really like them. I don't like Jodio and I don't like Dragona. I think they're just, I don't know, they just seem weird to me. Like Jodio isn't even a name, and Dragona is just odd. Like when I thought about JoJo and I thought about the whole 2 years, or just under 2 years that I've been thinking about this part and how it's going to go, neither of these names, whatever names I even thought were possible, mainly because they're not, at least in JoJo's case it's not even really a name. But like I said, I'm alright with them now. I'm still not hugely into them, but it's whatever at this point. I've already gotten used to them really. So yeah, that's kind of like my first real complaint, I guess. Not even really criticism, but just complaint is like, I wish the names were a bit better. I do like that the Joestar surname has come back. I am a big fan of that name, so I am glad it's coming back. But yeah, was just really not a fan of these names at first, but now I'm just kind of like, it's whatever, I've accepted it. But I'll be interested to see if they have any meanings or anything, that is a reason for them. But as for now, it's just kind of whatever to me. For the next couple of pages, we are given an introduction to our new location for this part, which is Honolulu, Hawaii. I think this is a great choice for the location. It's pretty unique for JoJo. I honestly don't think we've ever really had a tropical setting for JoJo. I think the most we can say that we've had is maybe some of the fights in part 3 as they were traveling across the world to Egypt. They may have crossed over some islands or something like that, but we've never had the sole focus of the setting being being a subtropical island or anything like that. So I'm very excited. I'm very excited for a more kind of I guess modern setting, because even though JoJolian was also modern day when it started, that part lasted for 10 years. So by the end of it, even though so much time had passed and so much technology and society had changed in all these different ways, everyone was still stuck in 2011. So it just felt very dated by the end of it. So who knows, we'll more than likely get to that point by the end of the JOJOLands, but we'll have to see. But for now, I like the setting. It feels very current, very modern. There's a couple lines later on about a character mentioning COVID and stuff like that, and Dua Lipa. So it's very modern times. I don't know exactly when it's set, there's no real idea, but it looks to be, I'd say, at least 2020 onwards. I'd say maybe even 2023 maybe, if it's set during the exact same time that the part starts in real life. But yeah, I give a big thumbs up to this location setting so far. I think it's a really, really great choice. So after some establishing shots of Honolulu, we eventually see a cop car pull over a car with some surfboards in it, and after the cop goes up to the window and the window rolls down, we get our first look at our two main characters. At first this seems like a routine traffic stop as the cop, asks the driver for any, information they have and stuff like that. And as the driver is confused as to why they're being pulled over, things get a bit tense and a bit heated between the two as the driver and the cop get a bit, kind of like reactionary towards each other. Like the cop kind of keeps getting closer and the driver keeps trying to back off, which the cop doesn't want. And things are just getting worse. And meanwhile, the passenger driver is just sat there eating food, doesn't really seem to care about what's going on. When the cop leaves to go check the driver's license, the driver, asks their passenger if they did anything wrong, and it's quite a funny panel here when the passenger says that you got pulled over because you were rocking too hard to do a leaper, and then the two of them laugh together. It's just a really this shot here of the JoJo on screen now, it looks really funny. It's such a mischievous grin and obviously good banter with the driver. It was just really cool. I really like this panel. When the cop comes back, however, things go from bad to worse when the cop suddenly gets very aggressive with the driver and demands they get out despite their protests about, I didn't do anything, what did I do? And then it gets from worse to horrible as the cop basically reveals their true intentions and proceeds to sexually assault the driver. Now, this type of content happening in JoJo is not new, much to my kind of dismay. This has been something that Araki has very much done quite frequently ever since JoJo moved to the seinen kind of genre and Ultra Jump from, Weekly Shonen Jump. And it's that thing of, when a female character, or at least, the main female character, ends up getting in a situation that is almost, near rapey at times. If you've read Steel Ball Run, you'll know that Lucy Steele gets a horrible deal throughout that part. She is constantly taken advantage of by, her elders, and, is just frequently put in, sexually harassing assault situation. It's just awful. And same thing happened to Yasuho in part 8. But it was just, if I had any real major complaints about Steel Ball Run and JoJolian, it was that, it just got old. How often these female characters were just put in these situations where some were a male, or even sometimes a female, was just, sexually harassing them or assaulting them or even nearly raping them at times. And it's just disappointing to see, in the first chapter, this just immediately happens. I know there's a point to it. I know, it's, seinen and Ultra Jump is a more mature audience, so I understand why this is happening. I understand, it's meant for you to sympathise with the driver and, make the cops seem, villainous, and for what happens after this, it's a very, I guess, not feel good, but it's a kind of vindicating moment what happens to the cops after this scene, but we'll get there eventually. But it's just just immediately we just get a scene that's just another, female or female presenting character just getting sexually harassed, and it's ugh. But anyway, we're not even at the worst of it yet, so we'll just keep going. So, as if things couldn't get any more horrible than they already are, the cop then proceeds to put their hands down the pants of the driver, where he discovers that the driver appears to have male genitalia. And this arouses the cop. He says, this is even better now. He's even more, determined to sexually harass or assault this driver. And it's just not great. It's just not great. But yeah, eventually the passenger gets out of the car, which the other cop notices, and he's like, stop, it's what are you doing? Put your hands up, don't get out of the car. And the passenger, who's Jodio, I don't know why I keep saying the passenger, Jodio ignores the other cop and confronts the cop that's currently harassing the driver and pretty much tells him to stop harassing my big bro. And everyone's kind of stunned that, Jodio is just ignoring their attempts to get him to freeze and try to tell him to stop. And when the other cop tries to stop Jodio by grabbing onto him, the cop suddenly gets hit by multiple raindrops and then all of a sudden collapses to the floor with multiple indentations in his skin. And at first I thought these raindrops were actually going through the cop, but on further inspection and after talking to other people about this chapter, I've come to realise the raindrops are actually seemingly very heavy and pinning the cop to the ground and basically just applying lots of pressure on him. It's kind of similar to Koichi's Echoes Act 3 from part 4. So as the cop is getting, pressured by all of these raindrops, the JoJo stand is revealed, and it is honestly one of my favourite stand designs ever. Absolutely my favourite JoJo stand design. I love this thing. The name doesn't get revealed until the end of the chapter, but I'll say it now. This stand is called November Rain, which is named after a Guns N' Roses song. And yeah, I love the stand already. I think this stand is sick. I'm already so kind of excited at the idea that it's not just another... the term people use is punch ghost, but it's the more kind of like the humanoid stands that like punch and go like muda muda or an aura and all that. I'm already like way more excited at the idea of like how this stand is going to be used in fights, because you know, this thing by the looks of it, it can't punch, it can't really do anything mobile, and I've seen some people complain about that, and I understand it, but personally, we've had so many parts now with, you know, the JoJo having a punch ghost that, you know, shouts aura and do these things. So like, I'm very excited at the idea of just seeing something different for once, and I'm very appreciative of Araki kind of like taking this chance, or maybe even, you know, putting this challenge on him in terms of like, how do I, you know, write a JoJo stand in a fight where I can't punch. But yeah, absolutely in love with this stand design. This is of the 3 stands that are in this chapter that get shown off and revealed for the first time, absolutely my favourite stand design. It looks amazing. Cannot wait to see more of this thing. I hope it doesn't change, because I know throughout other parts Araki has kind of like updated and, you know, changed and modified little things here and there for previous JoJo stands. I hope it doesn't change a thing about this stand. I absolutely love it. So as JoJo like unleashes his stand and we see it for the first time, he keeps walking towards the cop that was harassing the driver, while the other cop is still being pressurized by the raindrops. And as the cop, you know, goes to shoot JoJo, the driver like puts their hand over the cop's face, and when they, you know, move the hand, the cop's eyes have been moved or displaced. And I didn't see, like, obviously I said earlier, like, you know, certain pages leaked in, you know, Discords and Twitter and all that. I never saw this page before, you know, I actually read it, so this got a really good, like, whoa, kind of like big reaction from me. Was not expecting this kind of freaky looking panel with the eyes. Absolutely loved this moment, thought it was really, really cool. JoJo then proceeds to use November Rain to pin this cop down with the heavy rain, and then even though, you know, both cops are down and out and, you know, they're not at risk at any danger, JoJo proceeds to beat the living shit out of the cop. And I just really liked this. I really liked this little personality showcase from JoJo, just showing that, you know, as soon as he sees one of his family members in trouble, because the driver that was being harassed is indeed his older sibling Dragona, and it's just a cool moment from JoJo. I feel like I think it kind of set the tone of like, oh, you know, this guy is not just some kind of like mild-mannered whatever, you know. Not to say like the other JoJos like Josuke from Part 8 are mild-mannered. I don't think Josuke from Part 8 is mild-mannered at all, but, you know, it took a long time, I think, for something like this to happen with, you know, Josuke Part 8. But yeah, it's just a really cool moment. So JoJo is, you know, still beating the shit out of this cop, and Dragona is like trying to hold him back, and eventually he stops and, you know, gets them away. And while Dragona is just kind of like, wow, you know, just marveling at like the fact that JoJo just nearly beat these cops to death, she turns around, and like this was the moment where I was like, oh, I'm gonna like JoJo, because she turns around and all she sees is just JoJo lighting a cop car on fire. And I laughed my ass off at this. I thought this was so funny. This is like the stuff I love JoJo for, just the absolute absurdity of like, one moment JoJo is just viciously beating up these cops, you know, just pure rage at what they did to his sibling, and then Dragona turns around and he's just, you know, next panel or next page, he's just setting a cop car on fire. I loved it. I thought it was so funny. JoJo then explains that he's setting the cop car on fire because he wants to get rid of any of the evidence, you know, the body cam footage and all that, of the cops arresting them and meeting them. And after explaining that, Dragona suddenly is like, oh yeah, of course, that makes perfect sense. And then is like, oh, I'll change a license plate, and then pulls out their stand, which is called Smooth Operators. And I love these little guys. These are like some of the most, like, I don't know if it's intentional, but I think they are just adorable. So Dragona uses her, you know, displacing ability, which is what Smooth Operators does, to effectively reshape and realign or remove or whatever the license plate and change it into a different number, so that, you know, if the police do somehow manage to catch up to them, you know, at least the license plate will be completely different. And I really like the stand ability so far. You know, if it wasn't for how crazy good I think November Rain is, I think Smooth Operators would be my favorite stand so far. Like, it's crazy good that I have that, like, just out the gate we have 2 like amazing stands in this part already. I really cannot wait to see these used more in both, you know, combat and non-combat scenarios. So yeah, can't wait to see more of these stands in action. Dragona then uses Smooth Operators to kind of, I guess, get rid of the fake ID that they'd been using, that Dragona had given to the cop earlier. In this page as well, we get a really good shot at Dragona's Joestar birthmark, and I just want to say quickly that I'm really glad that Araki has actually given us, properly for the first time, Joestar siblings, even if Dragona isn't a JoJo. I think it's just really, really cool. This is something that, the closest we've ever really gotten to Joestar siblings, I guess, was Kei in part 8, but I don't know why. I don't know if, Araki hates Kei, but, he never really did anything properly with Kei. She was barely in the story for JoJolian, unfortunately, and when she did come back in, she just died straight away, which is still one of the worst deaths, I think, in the series, or just worst handlings of a character, I think. Really, really poor job with Kei, unfortunately. But no, this is really, really good. I'm glad that, I think it could have been really easy for Araki to be like, oh, Jodio and Dragona are siblings, but they're not siblings by blood, but they've been together for so long that they basically are, siblings. But no, it's clear cut. Dragona is a Joestar, she has the birthmark, they are related by blood, and I think that's really, 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 really cool, and I'm really excited to see more of Dragona. I don't know if I'd straight up say that they're my favourite character introduced so far, because Jodio has some really, really great scenes and lines in this issue, but I think out of all the characters, I'm definitely more excited to see more of Dragona. I can't wait to see just what they get up to in this part, stuff that they do and everything like that. I just really can't wait to see more of them. While we're on the topic, I suppose I'll get the elephant in the room out of the way in regards to Dragona's gender, which I honestly, I don't really know what to make of it yet. It's still a very hotly contested topic at the moment, and I imagine it will be for the majority of this part, if not all of it. We'll have to see if in future chapters Araki clarifies anything in regards to what's going on here. Personally speaking, I don't really care either way if, she's transgender or intersex or drag or whatever the theories are at the moment. I just care if she's a good character and if I end up liking her, which so far I do. So in that sense, she's already a plus to me. Whatever the case ends up being for her gender, to me, it's pretty much irrelevant. I just don't really care either way, and I like her already, and that's enough for me. But yeah, I am interested in seeing where it goes, but yeah, at the end of the day, whatever it ends up being, it's not that big of a deal for me. So after getting rid of all of their traces from this encounter with the police, Dragona has a very touching moment with Jodio where they hug him and kind of thank him for getting involved and saving them from that whole encounter with the police. They then drive off stoically, leaving behind the burning cop car and the beaten and bloody police officers behind. The two eventually drive to a kind of beach meetup or something where they meet some pretty dangerous looking people. There's guns and stuff and bodyguards everywhere, and then we basically find out that both Jodio and Dragona are involved in a drug gang that is going on within Honolulu. And this is interesting for two main reasons. The first is that this is very much clearly going to be a very morally grey main character, and this isn't new to the series. If you've read Steel Ball Run, you'll know that Johnny was very much a very morally grey character. He really had no kind of filter in terms of who he killed and who he didn't kill. He was willing to do anything it took to get what he wanted, and I don't think Jodio is going to be that bad. I don't think we're going to be getting that kind of ruthless of a person. But what is interesting as well, that kind of ties into the second thing, is that so far there has been a lot of Giorno comparisons to Jodio, visually, as well as a lot of things that I think a lot of people were expecting personality wise, that he'd be a bit like Giorno, and even I was kind of expecting it. But in a lot of ways, he seems like a kind of complete opposite to Giorno, in the sense of very similar, but almost kind of polar opposites, in that, Giorno was 15 years old and was very righteous and hated, drug dealers and drug dealers dealing to children. Whereas Jodio, who was also 15, seemingly has no problem with getting involved in drugs and dealing drugs to children, as we'll see later on when Jodio goes to school and continues his drug trafficking operations there as well. So yeah, it's very interesting to me that they've gone this route, and it's there's so many obvious parallels to Giorno, and yet personality and morally, they're just so completely the opposite. And I really like that, and I like that it's taking a character that because the thing with this alt universe ever since Steel Ball Run is it's been with these JoJos, it's been oh, here's Johnny, who's a version, who's the alt universe version of Jonathan, but he's completely different. Johnny and Jonathan are just so completely opposite despite sharing the same name. And the same can be said about the two Josuke's, even though, I'd say Johnny was a better example of this. And now we're doing this again with, Jodio and Giorno, where it's again, very similar, don't have the same name, but very similar kind of backgrounds, and not necessarily backgrounds, but just things that kind of are very similar about the two, yet the major things about them are completely different. And I just really like that, and it gets me excited to see where this is going to go and how JoJo is going to kind of like deal with certain things that maybe happened to Jono, and like Jono dealt with some things in a certain way. Basically, I'm saying that like it'll be very interesting to see how JoJo would handle those similar situations if they ever happen. At the end of the scene with the gangsters or the drug dealers or whatever you want to call them, we actually get my favourite panel in this entire chapter, where after they're both asked about, did you hear about this cop car that was found on fire on the other side of the city, both JoJo and Dragona just kind of like look at each other and they just shrug and like, oh well, I don't know. And like, I think this just really shows why I'm so excited for this dynamic and why I can't wait to see more of it, because you can just tell just by this alone, and other scenes of course in this chapter, that these two just are on such like a similar wavelength with each other, where it's like they don't even have to say anything. Just by looking at each other, they just know that they both are going to like deny this, that they have nothing to do with it. And I just love that, and I just really can't wait to see more of this and how this dynamic is going to shift, because it will shift, and like as things go on, and as I assume the stakes are going to get bigger and things are going to get more dangerous. I just really can't wait to see how deep this relationship goes and how this dynamic between the two evolves and goes in certain directions or whatever. But yeah, this is a really, really good panel. I just love the artwork on it, but it's just so funny, and I just really like how it kind of showcases this dynamic between the two. But yeah, by far my favorite panel so far in this chapter. Like so good. Following this scene with the drug dealers, we get a very much needed explanation as to how both JoJo and Dragona fit into the Joestar family in terms of like their relationships with Johnny and Josuke, etc. And we get introduced to their mother, Barbara Ann Joestar. So Barbara Ann is portrayed as a very loving woman and mother to her two children who, she's separated from her husband, so she's been raising the two alone. She's described as working at a duty-free shop at the airport, and the thing that is most kind of like stand out about this is that everyone in their town treats Barbara Ann with the utmost respect. Everyone goes out their way to help her. If she forgets something, everyone goes out to go get it for her. If it's raining and she doesn't have an umbrella, someone will come up to her with an umbrella. Basically, everyone just goes out of their way to look after her. And it's revealed that this is a result of the actions of JoJo and Dragona and the things that they've done to get themselves immersed in the drug scene and the gang members of Honolulu, and how they've done all this basically to secure the social standing and the monetary standing of their mother, so that basically everyone in the town respects them, and as a result they respect their mother. We then get a brief introduction into Dragona, who is often regarded as JoJo's brother, which is, again, the interesting thing about Dragona's, gender and all that, but, I'm not going to bother getting into it again. We then see the family tree finally, and we find out how both JoJo and Dragona are related to the Joestars. And amazingly, it turns out that the whole time throughout part 8, that Holly Joestar, Kira, and Joseph Joestar, there was another daughter basically. At the end of part 8, after the end of the whole Fumi flashback and the Radio Gaga stuff and the reveal of Joseph, it says at the end, once it goes through basically Joseph's whole life, that him and Susie Q, they had one daughter, and it says one daughter, which was Holly, which is, the character that is the major point of part 8 and blah blah blah. But no, it turns out Barbara Ann Joestar is the sister of Holly and is the daughter of Joseph. So this whole time apparently there was another sister, there was another daughter that is only now relevant now. It's just funny. Like, it's not that big of a deal. I think it's totally believable, but it's just funny to me that like at the end of part 8 Araki went out of his way to say that like Holly was Joseph's only daughter, and now, oh no, there was another one. But it's whatever. So yeah, I mean, I'm fine with this link. I think it makes sense. I think the alternative was that like Joseph cheated again, but it's kind of 6 and 2/3 really. I mean, at the end of the day, they're going to be Joestars, so I think ultimately it doesn't really matter that much how they're related in terms of like the setting. And so far, it seems like pretty far removed from part 8. Obviously, I kind of expect that to change, but to me, it doesn't really bother me that much that this is kind of like an ass pulley, kind of like, oh, there was a sister the whole time. It's just whatever. We then see JoJo at school, where he interacts with somebody on a bus. This is an older student at the school, and the student attempts to give JoJo some money for the drugs that he was given by the drug gang earlier. And again, another like great showcase of just how crazy and psychotic JoJo is. Instead of taking, the upperclassman's money, he just leaps on him and just immediately starts scrapping him, and the whole commotion on the bus and all that. It's just a really, really like funny moment. It just made me laugh. Like, it's just, this is the thing, I'm very surprised at how much JoJo made me laugh in this chapter. I don't really know what I was expecting with him, to be honest. I think once I heard some of the like JoJo connotations that people were saying before the like chapter came out, I was kind of like, because in all honesty, I'm not the biggest fan of JoJo. I think he's alright, but I just don't think he's that interesting of a character. But like already, like I'm just so entertained by JoJo and the things he says and does. So after they fight and get to school, JoJo goes up to the guy that he's scrapped with on the bus. We don't get this guy's name yet. He is an important character that, you know, will basically joins the main group at the end of this chapter, but we don't know his name yet. We'll probably find out in the next chapter. But this guy, you know, JoJo stops this guy and apologizes, says, oh, sorry for fighting you, and then basically gives him a warning of like, don't ever give me money on the bus again, like, what are you, stupid? And then, you know, kind of like shoos him off to this statue, which again, just another really funny panel where JoJo is just like, go on, shoo, and like, it's just so funny. I really love this guy's personality. Like, it's so entertaining. And then as this upperclassman is going to, you know, the direction where JoJo is shooing him to, this guy drives by on a scooter and basically drops a hint to this guy of like, oh, go find it here, it's in the drain. And it turns out that this is actually a drug dealing process, and that this is somebody that JoJo, you know, works with at the school to help, you know, transfer the drugs and the money and all that. We then get some backstory on JoJo himself, and as it turns out, JoJo has been in the drug dealing game for a very long time, as ever since he was 11 years old, he has basically been used as a gopher and as a mule to transport drugs and money and other things between, you know, here and to, very inconspicuously, while, you know, hiding materials inside giant stuffed animals, etc. And JoJo is kind of like, he's just very nonchalant about this. He's just kind of like, you know what, I never questioned it. I never talked to anybody about it. I never complained. I never did this. I just accepted it. And I just did my job because, you know, it meant nothing to me. It was just something to do. You know, I was told about it. I got money for it. You know, I didn't really care about, you know, the moral problems. Again, like, very, very morally grey character JoJo is. Like, just from this one chapter, like, this is not a man who has high morals. He's, again, very much unlike JoJo. And I really like this kind of like the similarities with JoJo and the complete opposite with JoJo. Like, this is really interesting to me. And, you know, this is, again, this whole monologue that he does is a very good example of just the inner workings of JoJo. And, like, I'm very excited to see more of him. During this monologue, we get my second favourite panel here, where he kind of compares himself to this random kid who, you know, has never done the things that JoJo has done to gain his social standing or the trust of the people in the city through his, you know, drug deals and everything like that. And he compares himself because basically this kid is just walking through it and he gets bullied by everybody, and, you know, JoJo's like, this kid's a nobody, he's gonna probably leave school after a while because he's just gonna get bullied incessantly because nobody respects him. And then while he's doing this, he compares himself, like, you got this guy and then you got me, and then he compares these two panels of him basically just like posing with women and like drinking wine. It's just really funny, just two amazing panels. Like, Araki went like so hard on some of these panels. Like, it was so funny, like how just hilarious some of these panels are. Like, he really, you know, did a great job on just humor, like, you know. So yeah, JoJo eventually gets to the point of this whole monologue as he talks about mechanisms, and at first I didn't really, you know, I was a bit like, okay, I had to reread it a couple times to like fully get what he meant here. But later on he says, you know, instead of mechanisms, he says sometimes you can call them systems, but he just prefers to call them mechanisms. And after that I kind of got it. But basically this whole spiel is basically JoJo saying that in his mind everything he does is as a result of, you know, is to gain the trust of his peers, to gain the trust of the people around the town, which eventually leads to, you know, prosperous things for himself and his family. And, you know, he says a thing here where it's, again, he's openly like, he's open about it. He's like, I know I sound conceited, I just don't care. Like, I can't lose. Like, when I use these mechanisms to my advantage, I can't lose. Like, I have everything. Like, even if I have enemies, even if I, you know, get into battles with these mechanisms, like, I can't lose. And again, this is a whole monologue that I'm sure is going to become very, very relevant throughout the rest of this part. Maybe not so much from here, but like definitely, you know, later on, more so towards the end, I feel like a lot of this is going to become very, 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 very relevant. But yeah, this is a really good monologue from JoJo here. Like, you really get an idea of just how he sees the world, how he sees society, how he sees other people, you know, how he sees his own family, how he sees, you know, what his actions lead to. And it's just, yeah, it's a very good thing. You know, again, like I said, he's open about how conceited it makes him sound and how cocky and how arrogant it makes him sound, but like, he doesn't care. Like, for him it works. Like, it doesn't matter if you think it's conceited. For him, it's a proven system. And yeah, it's just a really, really great monologue. And like, the writing is honestly being like insane in this chapter. Like I said, you know, I praise the art. Like, honestly, I'm gonna gush about it at the end, but like, this has been such a great chapter already. We're only like 44 pages in, so we've still got like, you know, another 20 or so left. But yeah, at the end of this whole like monologue, he basically confirms the plot of this story, which we already, like heard at the start of like, this is a story about how I just become filthy rich. Like, you don't believe me? I don't care. Like, this is the story. Like, I become mega rich after all this. We then get fully introduced to the character that drove by on the scooter earlier, and this is Paco Lovelantes. And very interesting name. I don't really know what to make this guy so far. He's, we only get like a little bit of him at the end of this chapter here, but we get some like odd details about him, like apparently he was like chubby 2 years ago, but now he's ripped. But we also get introduced briefly to his stand, and again, I don't really know exactly how this is going to work out. Obviously still early days, gonna have to get used to that, not knowing the whole part basically, the whole part at my fingertips, like the other parts are I could Google anytime, oh, what does this stand mean? Oh, it means that. Can't do that here, which I'm fine with. I'm interested in seeing, the wait is torturous. I'm already dying to see chapter 2, but it is what it is at the end of the day. But anyway, yeah, so we get a bit of Paco here, and his stand is called The Hustle, which is a song I quite like. It's I think the song is used in the quite funny scene from Futurama. I think that's how I know the song. But yeah, so his stand is called The Hustle, and very interesting ability. Again, like 3 for 3 on like really unique stands, and obviously we don't see the design yet. I don't know if this will even have a design. I hope it does. I like seeing stand designs. But yeah, so basically by the sounds of it, Paco can use his stand to like make his muscles like grip things. So like he's basically, there's a scene where like he just pickpockets somebody without anyone even really noticing, because as he walks by, he uses the muscles as he just walks, like he doesn't even move them, like as JoJo says, he doesn't move an arm, he doesn't move a finger or a limb, as he's walking, just he uses his stand, The Hustle, to just grab like someone's wallet, and then that's it, like it's just stolen. Very interesting. I'm interested in seeing, again, like one thing I'm really excited for this part is like, how are these going to work in fights, like or fights as we know them, in JoJo. I think this is going to be a really like alternatively, part in terms of just how things work. I think a lot of what we're used to from JoJo and Araki is definitely going to be thrown on its head for this, and I'm very excited to see, how this is all going to work and play out. Eventually, Paco is stopped by Dragona, who catches him and basically uses her stand smooth operators to pull Paco's ear. It's just a really funny scene. I'm interested in seeing this dynamic, because I think there's a line earlier where JoJo says, it's like, to be honest, like we're not even really friends. Like, I'm not friends with Paco, and like neither is Dragona. And there's even a scene later on where like Paco uses some slang of like, oh, meet me at the gym so I can like legally beat the shit out of you. They're not, these people aren't on friendly terms, but they already have an interesting dynamic, and I'm interested in seeing again how it's going to involve. This is kind of like what a lot of this review is going to be. It's going to be like, man, this is great, I can't wait to see more, because it is, it's chapter 1, like we can only go further and deeper into everything from here. We now slowly reach the finale of the chapter as we are introduced to, I guess you could say, the gang's ringleader, or kind of like organizer or something like that. Basically, this is the principal of the school, and this is Meryl May Chi, and she is, a very, very large woman. I get very much the big tall lady syndrome that a lot of people are getting very hyped at. I think Araki's jumped on the train for this character. But Meryl is basically, JoJo describes her as kind of like a fixer of sorts. Like, she organizes things, but, she very much has very little info about her. I think JoJo says, like, nobody even knows where she lives. But Meryl basically gives the three a job, in that somebody from Japan has flown in to oversee the transfer or something of this very expensive and precious diamond worth, I think, like $6 million. And basically she wants the three to break into the like holiday villa that this Japanese man is staying in, and basically steal the diamond from him. However, to the surprise of the three, Meryl tells them that they will not be going into the villa as a 3, they will be going in as a 4, as the upperclassman that JoJo and Paco sold drugs to earlier reveals himself. He enters the shop eating a hot dog, and is basically like, hey there, I'm joining your group, and everyone's shocked and like, hey, whoa, what's going on? We don't need him, like, why have we got a third person? And basically Meryl's like, no, you need 4 people, like, trust me, you can't do this with 3. And then, as we get the closing pages of the chapter, JoJo has like a narration where he's like, you know what, we couldn't have done it with 3, and even then we couldn't even do it with 4. So they're definitely building up this person at the villa and what happens at this villa. I've seen everybody already guess like, oh, it's going to be Josuke from part 8. I think that's too obvious. It very well could be, but I feel like Araki always tries to not go with the obvious route, and I think Josuke showing up would be I think that would be the obvious one. I think in general, someone from part 8 being in this villa, being this person who's, organising this transfer or something of the diamond, I think it's too obvious. So I don't really know what to expect. I'm just going to kind of go into it and see what happens. On the final page, we finally get the full reveal of each stand and their name, including Jodio and November Rain, Dragona and Smooth Operators, and Paco and the Hustle. And with that, we've come to the end of the first chapter of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 9, The JoJoLands. And honestly, I thought this chapter was fantastic. I honestly very well may say that this was the best first chapter of any part. I don't know if I'll go that far yet. I would probably have to go back and read through each one just to kind of get an idea of it. This is absolutely up there though. I think the higher page count than normal. I think this is actually the most pages in a single chapter with 69. Yeah, just the size of it definitely helped, and just the content in it, the writing was so much better than normal. I don't think JoJolian had bad writing. I think there were some flaws here and there that I think kind of was just a consequence of the type of story that Araki was trying to tell. I'm not going to say that he's a bad writer or anything, because he's not, but yeah, I think just JoJolian had some flaws here and there with just the nature of the story and Araki's storytelling ability. Just some things just kind of didn't work the way that they should have. But I think in general, the writing I think more than anything, the characterization of Jodio and the personality and the showcases of him, how he is and his interactions. I honestly I entered this chapter being I'm gonna like Dragona more just based off what I've already seen of her from leaks, but I absolutely left this chapter a massive fan of Jodio. Cannot wait to see more of him, to see what other stuff he's going to get up to, see more of his, his personality, his takes on the world, his takes on certain things. Just really fascinating character. I'm already so interested in seeing more of him. Same with everybody. I just can't wait to see more of it. What a fantastic start to a part. I'm so invested already in what's going on. I can't wait to see more. Araki has absolutely done a stellar job with this. You know what, I really, the last couple of years, waiting for JoJoLands, I've been oh man, I just want it. The wait was absolutely worth it for this chapter alone. Fantastic chapter, great opener. I cannot praise it enough, really. I literally, I don't really have any bad part. The only real complaint I can give is that I'm just, I'm not a big fan of the names, but I'm honestly fine with them now. I've come to accept them. So I honestly don't even really have that many complaints. Just really well written chapter. Characterizations was great. The artwork was fantastic. Some amazing panels. Honestly, this already has some top tier JoJo as a whole panels for me. But just in general, there's some really, really funny and memorable and just touching panels in this one chapter already. But yeah, just great stuff, man. I honestly can't wait to see more. But yeah, another month now, gotta wait. We're all back on the monthly schedule now, or for the first time for some people. I caught up to JoJolian right as Radio Gaga was starting, so I've had some experience in the past with dealing with monthly waits. But honestly, I'm glad we just don't have to wait 2 years anymore like we've just done for between the end of JoJolian and now the start of JoJoLands. But I'm going to leave things here. This was a very long video. If you've watched all the way, I really appreciate that. Yeah, 100% I'll be back to do a review for JoJoLands Chapter 2. Let me know what you thought of this whole kind of process, what I've done and the whole format. If you think it was great, let me know. If you thought it was too long, let me know. Just any feedback in general, I'll definitely take stuff into consideration and see what I can do better next time. But yeah, I'm going to leave things here. My throat and jaw, everything's sore. I've talked for far too much, but you know what? We only get with the start of one part, every now and then. Very rare occasion, especially for us people who've, only come into the series, since the anime started. This is a very special occasion for everybody. What a chapter, what a way to start a part. Cannot wait to see more. Thank you all for watching. I will see you next month for the next chapter. So thanks again, and I will see you all later. Goodbye.
We await your return, warrior.